Everybody, it's so lovely to be with all of you, and I want to thank our panelists for being here with us as well for this really important conversation. We have an incredibly distinguished group of speakers, we have all of you, and we want to dive right into this really important conversation. So I'd like to frame our conversation this way. There are a lot of terrible stories we could be telling, and maybe you will, and you're welcome to. We want to hear those, and we want to hear about the experiences of Jewish communities in your respective parts of the world. But let's also understand where we are today. We had a similar conversation a year ago. Here we are now, all these days after October 7th. And I think it's important for us to learn about and discuss what we have learned since then, what our respective governments are doing, what we can learn from that, and how we can lean into our sense of Kol Yisrael Avraim Zeh Bazeh, our collective global Jewish peoplehood and our sense of responsibility. So AJC is the global Jewish advocacy organization for the Jewish people, and these challenges are global. You represent different parts of the world. We have Australia, we have Mexico, we have France, and there are questions that remain. The experiences you all have are different. But there's a lot we need to learn about our sense of belonging, our sense of security, our sense of connectedness to our own countries. So let's begin with a little bit of a gut check. And, we want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly from all of you, because the good news is that not all the stories are terrible, and that's important for us to hear too. So, Renee, let's start with you. We're going to go geographically closest to farthest. Mexico and the U.S. are interconnected politically, economically, culturally. We certainly have seen a rise of anti-Semitism here in the United States. And tell us what the experience has been like for the community in Mexico.
Thank you, Melanie. It's an honor to be here this afternoon. Things in Mexico are very different. Anti-Semitism has never been manifested by physical threat or hostility or public hostility, but nevertheless, we are not immune to the global trends that happen to the rest of the world. Since October the 7th, we've seen an increase in anti-Semitic posts in social media and in media as well. And we also seen a growth in the pro-Palestinian, the small pro-Palestinian groups that are in Mexico, which they manifest themselves with demonstrations in front of the Israeli embassy and of the American embassy, and with cultural events. What's very different from the US, it's what happens in the universities in Mexico. We've had very few, I won't say that we didn't have any anti-Semitic incidents, but none of them have turned into a trend. And we had a couple of intents of encampments which did not succeed. For many, many years, the Jewish community has a strategy to have good relations with the universities, and since October the 7th, we did an approach with the deans of the universities, asking them to support us to have a safe environment for the Jewish kids. And we've done this, and with the help of the students and the authorities, we managed to maintain the level of anti-Semitism in the universities at a very, very low. We understand that things can change very quickly, so every day we analyze the strategy that we are doing, and we try to make all the changes necessary to be sure that we can still be safe in our country.
Thank you. Jonathan? The story in France may be a little bit different. And we've all been following the rise of anti-Semitism in France. What can you tell us about where things stand today?
Thank you, Melanie. I'm very honored to be here, and I will tell you some facts and figures about the situation in France. Well, I come before you not only as the president of CRIF, but also as a witness to reality in France, which should alarm any defender of democracy. I'm the voice of a Jewish community which has lost 13 members over the last 20 years. It is much more than the US compared to the size of the French Jewish population. We have a strong support from public authorities, to be honest, but we know that anti-Semitism does not come from the state today. It comes from part of the public opinion, part of the French citizens. This anti-Semitism has multiplied by 4 after October 7th compared to the year before. This year, every 3 days, one person is a victim of a physical assault due to antisemitism. Every 3 days. The phenomenon has also reached schools. That's something which is very important, and I want to share one figure with you. 1 out of 3 students in French schools refuse to be friends with a classmate who is Jewish and shows his support to Israel. It gives you an idea of the level of social rejection that young French Jews have to face in France. But I want also to be honest with you. We have a lot of allies in the French society. We have a lot of people understanding that this challenge is not only a challenge for the Jews, but a challenge for the whole French democracy. The fact is that this hatred is fueled by 3 ideological sources. You have the hatred of Israel with the far left. You have the radical Islamism, and you have the rise of conspiracy theories on the social networks. So we'll continue to fight. We'll never hide. We are proud citizens, and we will continue to fight against antisemitism in France.
Thank you. Joel, I think many of us here in the United States were really shocked to see the rise of not just anti-Semitism in Australia, but violent anti-Semitism with some really appalling incidents, things being set on fire, all kinds of vandalism, again, a really violent form. So help us paint a little, if you can, a picture for us of what's happening in Australia, and help us understand whether these are really perpetrated under the guise of so-called anti-Zionism, or are there other factors at play as well?
So thank you very much for having me. We've unfortunately seen all of the horrible scenes in Australia over the past 18 months, a problem that we never thought existed. The fact that I'm sitting here on this stage right now talking about an anti-Semitism crisis is in stark contrast to what we all thought Australia was for Jews. And realistically, it was a haven for Jews. In every aspect of Australian life, Jews were able to reach the lofty heights of any office, whether that be in politics, in law, in commerce, the arts, entertainment. It really was a utopian world for Jews in many respects. And then in the hours, literally the hours, not the days, not the weeks, but the hours after October 7, anti-Semitism spewed onto the streets of Sydney and Melbourne and other major cities. So we had the lighting of fireworks and celebrations on the streets of Sydney whilst the massacre was still ongoing on October 7 itself. We all remember the scenes at the Sydney Opera House on October the 9th, mere 48 hours after the invasion and the massacre began, where police stood by and watched as crowds chanted, "Kill the Jews, where's the Jews?" and lit Israeli flags on fire. They stood there and they watched while that happened. And since that day, over 18 months, we've had a gradual increase in the anti-Semitic incidents, but also in the gravity of those incidents, whether that be the violent tagging of a school with graffiti, Jew die, at the largest Jewish school in Australia. We've had synagogues under lockdown. We've had synagogues being firebombed and burnt down. We've had linkages with organised crime. In every single aspect of Australian society, Jews have really come up against it. So it's a significantly deeper problem than just in the guise of anti-Zionism. Australia has an anti-Semitism problem. It appeared to have been contained in a box before October 7, but when those Hamas terrorists came over the southern border, that box was unfortunately opened. And in the void of true leadership, which I know that we'll get to later in the panel, that problem was able to fester, and for the past 18 months, Australian Jews have been under siege.
Thank you. Let's talk then about the response and how governments are responding. And Renee, last year Mexico elected its first female and Jewish president. And although her Jewishness has not necessarily been at the forefront of her identity, it does speak volumes about the stature and status of Mexico's Jewish community and the society's respect for diversity. At the same time, of course, as you noted, Mexico is not immune to anti-Semitism. So how has the government, you talked about some of the civil society institutions, the universities and the relationships. What has the conversation been like with the government? And do you feel that the Mexican government is doing enough to ensure the safety and security of the Jewish community?
Mexico is a multicultural country with a straight separation between church and state. Say that the Mexican government, with the interest of supporting that all the citizens have the same equal rights, in 2003 established a law, again, an anti-discriminatory law that considers anti-Semitism as a discrimination act. And in 2023, they enacted a law prohibiting the use of Nazi symbols, even though in Mexico it's not such a big trend. Nevertheless, we've seen that sometimes the government supports, we have a very strong relation with the government. The Jewish community, we are around 45,000 people in a country of 130, and we have a proactive activity, and we have relations with all the churches, with the civil society, with media, with mass media, with academics, and with universities. And this has been very important for us. We have good relations with the law enforcement agencies, and we have been working with them to ensure that our institutions are safe. Now that I hear what you're telling about what happens in Australia, we seldomly have anything against any Jewish institution or community in Mexico. The government is very close with us. This is a strategy that we've been working for over 30 years. And we think that we have to keep on going. And to keep the safety of the community and the well-being, we have to continue working in a combination of three assets. One of them is a strong internal community, a strong internal organization, a very good communication with the authorities, and also good relations with the rest of the civil society. So then you can have the three parts of the chair, well, of a chair of four, now it's three, and to promote a very good situation for the Jews. We understand that this could change. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but the good relations that we have with the authorities have made it possible for us to talk to them, to be close to them, and when we've had problems, they always react. So we feel safe. There's other issues in the country, insecurity, drug cartels and everything, but as Jews, we have a safe life. You can walk in the streets of Mexico City with a kippah, with tzitzit, whatever, and nobody would shout at you or nobody would do anything.
Thank you. Thank you. So again, Jonathan, the situation in France, not so simple either. There's a disappearing middle. We've seen this. We've seen extremism both on the right and the left. Do the Jews of France see their leaders taking positive action, or do they feel that the leadership sometimes is stoking the flames of anti-Semitism? How do you position yourselves with regard to your leadership?
Well, the political situation is complicated in France. As you know, we had elections a few months ago, both European and parliamentary elections in France, with results which poses some challenges for the Jewish community, because we have a strong minority from the far right and another minority, but quite strong, from the far left. The far left is very vocal against the Jews, very vocal on the war in Gaza, using that as a pretext, as an excuse to target Jews. So it's very difficult for us. The problem is that the far right instrumentalizes the fight against anti-Semitism to try to gain respectability in the political arena in France. So we have to fight the far left without, I would say, giving help in any way to the far right. And that's something very difficult, because now we have a moderate center, which is still a majority, but a very tiny majority. everyone is very worried regarding the coming presidential elections in 2 years' time now, in 2027. And we know that the Jewish issue, the issue of anti-Semitism, will be at the center of the political debate in the coming month. And our goal, our main responsibility as Jewish institutions is to make sure that Jews and the fight against anti-Semitism are not instrumentalized by anyone.
Thank you. Joel, Australia is having an election in a few days, May 3rd, and it appears there's this choice between the Labour Party and the Liberal Party. Can you tell us a little bit about the distinctions in the two parties and how they're approaching anti-Semitism? And we always welcome political predictions. It's always fun.
So I'll try not to be too technical, but you're right. We have an election coming up on Saturday, May the 3rd. Now, unfortunately, in terms of the real main part of your question, there is a divide between the current Labour government's position, especially on Israel, and a previous very long-standing bipartisan position. And that deviation occurred, it's very important to note, it occurred before the events of October 7, in actual fact a year beforehand, where the Australian government reversed its recognition of West Jerusalem. So when President Trump in his first administration recognised Jerusalem as Israel's capital, the Australian government followed suit by recognising West Jerusalem as sovereign Israeli capital, and then the Labour government removed that, actually on Simchat Torah, on a Jewish holiday, which caused great angst in the community. But since they came into power 3 years ago, there has been a steady departure from that long-standing bipartisan position, and many inside the Jewish community feel as though that subtle antagonism between Australia and Israel has also had a tangible impact on how the government has reacted to the anti-Semitism crisis in Australia. So this Labor government, by many inside the community, has failed to recognise the gravity of the anti-Semitic problem in time. We're ineffective in doing things at the first instance, which allowed the problem to fester and essentially put the Jewish community under siege, as I've said, for the past 18 months. There is a difference with the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party is vocally more, I would say, has a stronger position on Israel at the moment. To give you an example, this current government refuses to answer a question as to whether or not Prime Minister Netanyahu would be welcome in Australia whilst the ICC warrant is out for his arrest. As a steadfast friend of Israel, which has been a friend of Israel since Israel's establishment, that is an awkward place for this government to be. Currently on the polls, and I'm not going to predict the outcome, but currently on the polls, it looks like Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, will be retained and the Labor Party will be back in power. However, there is a real opportunity that we fall into minority government, and again, not being too technical, that will mean that the Labor government doesn't have enough seats in the lower house to govern and will require minor parties to form a governing coalition in minority. The concern is that 13%, well currently on primary vote, 13% of the Australian population votes for the Greens Party. The Greens Party is a toxically anti-Semitic party. So any opportunity for the Labor government to form minority government with a party like the Greens would ultimately make the position of the Jewish community in Australia far more difficult when it already is very, very difficult at this time.
Wow, thank you. We will be watching. So we really have about 90 seconds left. So we're going to do a lightning round for the last question. And that is really, we have this captive audience here. What can we be doing together to learn from one another's best practices, to really fight anti-Semitism together and really support the global Jewish people together? I'll start with you. Jonathan, please.
Well, first of all, being together here from different parts of the world is the best answer to anti-Semites from all over the world. Our unity is, I think, our strength, and we have to cultivate that, even if sometimes Israeli journalists seem to be to have some difficulties with that. But I do think that we have to share experience on the fight against anti-Semitism, and we do it with the American jury. We have done it for long, and we'll do it in a common forum, French-American Forum Against Antisemitism in Paris between CRIF and AGC in June. So I'm very glad that we'll continue this dialogue in order to be fruitful against antisemitism.
Thank you. Joel?
So this is not my saying, but it's a good one nonetheless. On October 7, the diaspora community became a little bit more Israeli, and after October 7, Israelis became a little bit more like diaspora Jews. And what I mean by that is that we, in our communities, especially in Australia, we need to look towards Israel to see what the Israeli people did on the day itself and what they've subsequently done. Their strength, resilience, and their determination and their grit is something that we can look to and we can take to our own community, because the Australian community is not going anywhere. We are proud Jewish Australians. We are a strong community, and we will remain loud and proud. And I'll just give you a short story to explain that, and it would be very quick. I was in Israel only 3 weeks ago. I was sitting within a group of Australian journalists, non-Jewish Australian journalists, and we were meeting with hostage families. And the father of Omni Miran, Danny Miran, before we could even start, he looked at me and he said to me, "How are you doing? I hear all the bad things that are happening in Australia." And for a father who's had his son captive for well over 500 days, and with the anguish and the sheer pain that he is suffering, he within our own peoplehood knew of what the suffering of Australian Jews were like, to take the time and the presence to ask me that. That is the Jewish peoplehood in a story, and that's what we will continue to do. We will continue to be Am Yisrael, all in the same heart.
And Renee, you can close us out.
Melanie, I would like to share with you that our community, it's a very Zionist community. A big percentage of the members of the community have been in Israel. All our kids in junior high school travel to Israel, and they all know Hebrew. We invested a lot of resources in Jewish education. So we have 95% of our kids going to a Jewish day school, which gives us a low rate of intermarriage. And we are very Zionist, but we are very proud Mexicans, and we are very well integrated to the community. And I want to share with you that my pride that today we have 22 young adults of the Jewish community participating in the Global Forum. And that makes us very proud, because they are one of a kind. And there's a sense of belonging in the Jewish community. It's like a Mexican Jewish DNA. And you were saying that what we are supposed to do to remain Jewish, and we think that we have to go in the same sense that we are doing. And I want to thank AJC, just to wrap up, AJC and Bila for allowing us to participate in this forum, because of course sharing experiences, learning what our communities are doing, it's a very important thing for us in Mexico. And thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your leadership. We will continue to work with all of you and work together. And Am Yisrael Chai.